Good evening. Oh, there it is. Good evening. My name is Enos Harris, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing has been recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider 5 items. Order number 210241 to consider removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2030 and 2034 Greenwich Street. Order number 210242 to consider removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 510 Stockton. Order number 210244 to consider removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 2226 15th Street. Order number 210245 to consider removal of 1 street tree without replacement adjacent to 3425 Cesar Chavez Street. And order number 210246 to consider removal of 1 street tree with replacement adjacent to 1000 Sutter Street. My job as a hearing officer is to gather facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Public Works Director make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided them correct information. This hearing will proceed as follows for 5 cases. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There is no time limit for this presentation. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant to speak, any member, then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. Then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you are raising your hand. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If you're on the phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open the hearing to public comments. Members of the public may make comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any comments at this time? I see one hand raised. Do I see a hand raised?
Yes, we have one hand from
Okay.
Josh. Go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Oh yeah, before we go into the hearing, I just want to note that San Francisco has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. 13.7% canopy against a national average of 27%. In 2023, our Urban Forestry Council released a report which found that over the last 6 years, rather than net gain the required 2,500 trees per year, we have lost nearly 1,300 street trees, and this does not include trees in parks or on private property. Additionally, while Street Tree SF sets aside $19 million annually to remove trees and fix sidewalks, there are $0 set aside in our city budget to plant and water new trees. The city's 2021 Climate Action Plan set a goal to increase the street tree population by 155,000 street trees, bringing San Francisco to a fully stocked urban forest by 2040. To achieve this goal, we would need to plant 81,300 street trees by 2040. Please note the city conducted a street tree census in 2017, and at the average rate of street tree planting since fiscal year 2018, the city will not even be able to plant back to the starting population of 125,000 trees counted in 2017, let alone meet the climate action plan by 2040. In fact, with the current rate, by 2040, we will be thousands of trees behind. One final note is just to the extent that we consider removing trees for parking, driveways, and garages, please note that San Francisco currently has twice as many parking spaces on our streets as there are street trees. We cannot afford to continue to remove trees without the funds or means to replace them when we know that our city and planet cannot afford this continued and unsustainable irresponsibility for our future generations of people and ecosystems. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. And I do not see any other hands at this time. Oh, there is one hand. Go ahead,
Okay.
John Nolte.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. I just want to clarify a couple of things that what happened in the last meeting, that we don't do this meeting. There were rebuttals, and then you didn't give everybody a rebuttal. So I appreciate there be no rebuttals to any questions, because then it only prolongs it, and also doesn't give everybody, all parties involved, the ability to rebuttal. And last time the clerk said there was not to be rebuttals, and we had rebuttals, and then it stopped, and I raised my hand, and you didn't recognize me. So I don't think that's fair to the public or anybody at this meeting if there's going to be multiple rebuttals by multiple entities to whatever questions or statements are made during their presentation and after during their hearing the tree. And also, I'd like to them to limit the hearing. This is a tree permit hearing, not anything else. And that's why the obviously people go off on other things that are not relevant to a specific issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there another hand?
Yes, my name is Michael Nolte, N-U-L-T-Y. Yes, I've attended quite a few of these meetings, and it gets kind of.
My apologies. Hold on. I removed permission to talk to the wrong person. Just a moment. Bear with me. Okay, my apologies, Mr. Nolte. You
Okay,
should be able to speak now.
thank you. My name is Michael Nolte, N-U-L-T-Y. I've attended quite a few of these meetings in the past, and my main goal is to try to give some clarity to what the issues are. But at the same time, it seems that a lot of times the presentations, not from the city, but from the other presenters that are on the agenda, are not kind of clear what the purpose of the hearings are. And they give presentations about the developments or you know, why they want to, well, anyway, they give their opinions, which I guess in a public forum, they're allowed to, but at the same time, again, what has been previously said, these are tree permit hearings. These are about the what is happening with our canopy in San Francisco. And one question I still have is Clara Short, is she the acting director or is she the director of Public Works? Because when you say you're going to give a report to the director's office, is she the director or the acting director? That's my only other question. Thank you.
Thank you. So Carla Short is the Director of Public Works. Are there any other comments? Okay, and so if there are no more comments, I will close this item. This item is now closed. The first item on today's agenda is order number 210241 to consider removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2030 and 2034 Greenwich. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, good evening. This is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works. I may have shared my screen a little too quickly. Cerise, is my headshot still visible? Or is my
yes.
PowerPoint?
Your
It is.
PowerPoint is visible, yes.
Okay, let me stop share because for common decency, I just wanted to say hello. So my name is Chris Buck, and I'll present and represent staff this evening for the Bureau of Urban Forestry within Public Works. And just to confirm again, Carla Short is now the permanent director, which is exciting for our Bureau because she is the previous urban forester. And I've been working with her for almost 19 years, and she started 20 years ago, I think in March. So thank you for letting me segue. I'm going to present my screen now, and we'll present information about individual cases at the start of each item. There is some additional information that we'll share also at this very, very start, in which we then won't repeat before each individual case. So now I will go ahead and share the screen. Thanks for your patience. And let's get this in slideshow mode. So just wanted to state a few things here that Public Works and the Bureau of Urban Forestry, one of our primary goals is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure and public rights of way. The Bureau of Urban Forestry, or BUF, which is the acronym we often use, is to preserve and grow the urban forest while balancing the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. These are some images of work that we do. Moment. Page down. There we go. Oh, okay. So during public comment, there was reference made to a critical year in San Francisco, which was completing our census in 2016, and a proposition that was passed in 2016 and became effective in July 1st, 2017, where Public Works began taking on the responsibility for all of the existing street trees in the public right-of-way. While before that, we were only maintaining 1/3 of the street trees, and funding even for those 1/3 for maintenance continue to be cut each year. So we do now have a set aside for maintenance, and we are closing in on wrapping up our first complete round of maintenance. We refer to the city's management of the street trees by Public Works as Street Tree SF. And We do have an ordinance. It's Article 16 of the Public Works Code, which is our urban forestry ordinance. And it establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. It establishes that a tree removal permit is required to remove street trees, a significant tree, which would be on private property, and or landmark trees. Landmark trees would also require, most importantly, a review and approval by the Board of Supervisors. There was amendments to our urban forestry ordinance in February 2022. One of a couple of bullet points here is that if the department is removing a tree, we need to replace the tree within 120 days, or if not done within 120 days, added and tracked on a delayed replacement tree report. If the tree cannot be planted in the same site or immediate frontage from which it's being removed, we need to plant a site nearby. If the property owner applicant is granted removal permit for removal of a healthy tree, a tree that we're saying should remain, the department shall require a replacement street tree of equivalent value to the one removed or impose an in lieu fee. Simple example, simple in quotes, owner pays the difference between the appraised value of the subject tree minus the value of replacement tree. The value of the replacement tree is based on the standard in lieu fee for a 24-inch box or installation replacement size. What this is trying to clarify is that sometimes with a limited frontage, you can't realistically plant the equivalent trunk diameter value. And so we need to figure out a way to make everyone whole based on the rules of our ordinance. We have some general tree removal criteria. In general, if a tree is relatively healthy and sustainable, the Bureau of Urban Forestry would recommend that a tree not be removed. So tree removal criteria broadly would typically mean there's a dead tree or a dying tree or a tree that's just not thriving and is not likely to recover. It may be a poor species for the location based on the growth and space that the site allows, or the growth itself is no longer sustainable. There could be a certain amount of damage to private property. It would have to be pretty significant. Or also, we approve trees if the tree is hazardous. We also often will talk about trees if they're relatively small, less than 4 inches in diameter, and construction requires removal. We may allow at the staff level initiate approval based on the tree being able to be replaced in kind. Sometimes trees may be destabilized by construction. If there's no feasible way to work around the tree, we will fight and advocate for trees to be retained in many cases. But if we don't think there's realistically a likelihood of success, then we may approve it at the staff level. The applicant needs to provide sufficient supporting documents in those cases. If the tree is in good to fair condition, the applicant must pay an appraised value for the loss of the tree. Thanks for your patience before we get into the first case. So with that general background, which is just a touch of all the different things that are taking place, we are considering this first case at 2030 to 2034 Greenwich Street. It's Public Works Order 210241. It's to consider the removal of 2 street trees with replacement adjacent to 2030 and 2034 Greenwich Street. Bureau of Urban Forestry staff approved the removals and the public protested. This is a photo of the subject tree. It's a ficus tree. The Latin or scientific name is Ficus microcarpa nitida. And it's tree 1 of 1 in front of the property. As you can see, it's to the left of the driveway garage entrance. And the staff notes here, this was prepared by urban forestry staff and reviewed by me in advance of the hearing. So department staff received several complaints and requests for maintenance on this block. Street tree SF maintenance cycle shows that we last pruned the trees in 2018. The tree has been approved for removal due to poor condition. The tree has had multiple failures in the past, so the current structure has probable likelihood of failure within 5 years. We will talk a lot today because we have a few tree removal cases that involve ficus trees, where we may refer to our tree removal criteria for ficus trees. One of the criteria is that the tree be very tall and large, which this one is not as tall as the criteria state. The tree removal criteria is often referring to ficus trees that are closer to 50 feet in height. That said, when trees experience large stem failures like this tree has, it exposes the remaining stems to winds in a way that it hasn't been exposed before, and it has not developed the kind of strength within its structural stems to support the new exposure to the winds. It experiences those winds in a much stronger way and almost serves as a lever arm where the large stems break apart at the main union of the trunk. So that's what we're looking at here. Also, to clarify, I do want to assure the public that anyone may call in and say, oh, I'm worried about this tree, or when's the next round of maintenance, or this tree doesn't look right. That's a starting point. So in this statement that we'd received complaints, I want to clarify that that's a starting point just to get us on site to evaluate the overall condition of the tree. Sometimes people think trees are big and scary, and it's just a dialogue starter. But then our staff, who are certified arborists, go to the site and we will make our own recommendations. So I do want to assure the public that just because we receive a request for maintenance and or other types of complaints, the first order of business is to establish if routine pruning can address the issue so that we can retain the tree. That's our top priority. So our staff did note that this site can be replanted. There is space to replant the location. Again, we talked about, here's an image on the right before pruning and or branch failures. These images are showing a low live crown ratio, which contributes to a likelihood of failure before the next maintenance cycle. This is a close-up of the tree. The image on the left and the image on the right shows multiple narrow points of attachment with stems, where as these stems grow laterally in width, they actually begin forcing their own unions to separate and split. So that's the species pattern of failure that we experience with ficus trees, which has been well documented. And we have a section on our website that goes into this in great detail. But again, just showing the poor structure with what remains of the tree. And here is another image. That's right, we're considering the removal of 2 street trees. So to clarify, the first tree we were just discussing is tree 1. We're also discussing the removal of the second tree, which is tree number 2. I'm not sure why it's labeled tree 1 here. Let's clarify that. Our tree database has unique social security numbers, what we call unique tree IDs. So both of these trees have their own correct tree ID. This is tree number 2, but that's a mistake on the screen in the upper left corner. They should say tree number 2. But the ID is 34681. Again, same information, background information. We reviewed the condition of the tree. We looked at when we're next likely to be pruning trees on this site. We don't have that scheduled yet. So with that being said, this tree has the structures far poorer than the previous tree that we just looked at, with easily double the number of competing stems, where they're all prone to fail, where they join at a single point. So you can see these large stems all diverting from a single stem into at least 8 stems or so. Where all of these individual stems join the main trunk, these are all inherently weak places within the trunk where we typically would see a ficus fail when ficus trees have failed. And then showing that both trees can be replanted, we've accounted for the required distances from existing utilities. So both trees can be replaced. So this would be the removal of 2 trees with replacement of 2 trees by Public Works. And again, it's 2 ficus trees in very poor condition. So that concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is the appellant here to speak?
In this case, it may just be anyone from the public who had protested because Public Works initiated the
Got it.
removal.
Okay, thank you. If there are any members from the public who wish to make a comment? Okay, I see 2 hands.
Good evening. This seems to be a pattern of public, as what Chris described about, well, these may fail within 5 years before the pruning cycle. So basically, this is going to a tree, looking at it, and because it's in the ficus database. That's, by the way, the 3rd largest amount of trees in the city, and you're systematically taking them out. And also not even some of them not even coming to the hearing. You were taking out rows of them in the city. I find that very annoying to know. I have a petition online with over 10,000 signatures, and you are continually trying to take out trees that you've already learned that you can prune them, bring them back, bring them down. And that you experimented in Hayes Valley, you experimented in Mission, you experimented around Civic Center area. Various places, even next to your, behind your main location there off Market Street, and you were able to trim ficus trees back to so that they can be survive, and whether the issues of one branch failure does not mean that another branch failure is going to happen. And because there are wires to one of the pictures, I'm not clear if that's also because of poor pruning by PG&E. So, we have other entities, people probably trimming these trees besides Buff. And also the other issue is, since these are in a row, on Greenwich Street, not Grand Street, what you're saying, it's Greenwich, say the right word here as a street on a recording, Chris. There's row on either side of the street, and so you're destroying rows on both sides of Greenwich Street, ficus trees that are already there. So this is a systematic removal, unnecessary removal of trees without proper pruning them. And also saving you money in the long run by doing it ahead of time and putting these on the agenda. So that's my response.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Emily T. Yes, go ahead, Emily T.
Sorry about that. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Emily, and my wife, Alexandra, and I are the recent property owners of 2034 Greenwich Street. Research shows that trees provide valuable benefits and improve the quality of life in cities. The green infrastructure of our city is considered an essential worker and therefore should be strongly protected. As this first speaker of this evening's meeting mentioned, so I'll be brief on this point, but, SF's urban tree canopy is the smallest of any large US city. DPW's website explicitly notes that SF simply cannot afford to lose trees. As property owners, we ask that DPW not remove these trees in front of 2034 and 2030 Greenwich Street. You know, we see these as healthy trees that shouldn't be removed when the tree population is already greatly diminished. You know, though this group's mission is to balance greenery with safety and the needs of the growing city, it's not clear to us what's unsafe about the trees. They're not dead, dying, not failing to thrive. They're not a poor species for this space, and no damage to private property. You know, as far as we can see, DPW notes that these trees are in poor to fair condition and have recently failed, but it's just unclear how that's true. As far as we can see, it seems like the trees were last maintained in 2018, which is 6, you know, whole years ago with no scheduled future maintenance. We asked that DPW consider maintaining these trees instead of cutting them down. You know, as we're recent property owners, we have not been given sufficient time to consider whether these trees should be considered landmarks or designated significant, though we're currently exploring that possibility.
I think he's still there.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I don't know where I cut out, but I just said you know, we, happy to provide our contact information and continue the discussion within the coming weeks and months. And we appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record, I had heard through explore, looking for time to explore options for landmarking or having them designated a significant tree and other things before it cut out. So I was able to hear, I believe that was the bulk of the comment. There might have been a couple of things missed. Otherwise, I think we got most of it.
I think there's another hand. Okay. Go ahead, Blake.
Hi, this is Blake Whitmer. I also appreciate the time and opportunity to speak. I thought I might jump on and just listen in more than anything, but also provide a little bit of color. I'm a property owner here and recognize some of the voices here on the call as well. And just thought I might share that over the last 2.5 years of myself living here, we've had substantial issues with the trees with both PG&E and the city. And myself and the former owner in my building made many efforts to get these trees trimmed. Several attempts were successful in having some folks come out and do some maintenance to them. But we also, not to provide too much color here, but had issues with the San Francisco Attorney's Office, who got involved with a PG&E incident, which we experienced building-wide surges to all of our appliances and resulted in us having to replace everything because of these attempted calls to get both PG&E and the city to come out and trim them, neither of which would take ownership. Trees, branches have fallen on cars in the past, and I personally am very open to an alternative being put in place or something else new. I would be curious to, we absolutely love the coverage. It's really nice and it looks good. So would be curious to see what type of tree would go in and maybe the growth schedule associated with that tree, and maybe set some expectations of what the future would look like with these replaced.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments? Okay, Josh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't usually say much when it comes to ficus trees, except for the work that we did along 24th Street, and saving, when the city proposed to take down all 78 trees on that corridor, and we managed to get that down to 33 ficus trees through the work of an independent arborist and also the city's willingness to explore some experimental pruning. I don't know if that applies here. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not an arborist. I don't know if that's already been examined or not. What I will say is that it's pretty unusual to hear homeowners come in and number one, try to save a ficus tree. And I want to acknowledge that and thank the homeowners for doing that. And also to come in and talk about how much they value this and have tried to keep these trees in good shape over the years, perhaps despite PG&E's best efforts, which their pruning doesn't tend to be real nuanced. But what I want the homeowners to know, the property owners to know, is that because this is a city initiated removal, there is a really, really long wait list for replacement trees right now, because there is no dedicated funding in the city budget for it. Basically comes from Prop K taxes and donations and grants. So if you want to get some trees replaced sooner rather than later, you may need to work with the city to get that permit and get it done yourselves, because otherwise it could take a very long time. So just wanted to just put some paint some realism here on what the city is up against, which is why I come to these things month after month to try to save what we can save. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another comment? Yes, Mr. Nolte.
Hi, name is Michael Nolte, NULTY. I appreciate the property owner taking the time to speak at this hearing, as well as the other person that claimed to live in the vicinity. Trees have a life cycle. What I've already heard from the presenter from the urban forester was that these trees are only 30 to 35 feet tall, and they can go up to 50 feet or higher. So they're not at their maximum width and height. The species at other parts of the city have gone to those heights. And so, we've had some very bad storms so far in the last 6 months or so. And these trees, obviously, if you can take a picture of them, and I know the pictures are fairly current because of the fact that they have the postings on them for removal. And that was how you probably people got noticed of this hearing. I just, wonder how the city can do better. One, we don't have a budget for for replacement per se, and we've heard now that we do have a permanent person in charge of DPW. I mean, that should be their role, is to advocate for better budgets. And when it was enacting, things were kind of up in the air, but now we have I would like to say that, basically on all these hearing issues today, until there's a budget to replace, why are we having these hearings? I mean, it's kind of, we're kind of like, we're just going to have a bunch of stumps throughout the whole city, and we're going to just look like that until there's money to put more trees in. So I think it's a shame. Trees do provide a lot of things to the neighborhood, besides beautification. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Okay, if there are no more comments for this item, I will close this item and make my recommendations to the director. The next item on the agenda is order number 210242 to consider removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 510 Stockton. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. This is Chris Buck again, urban forester with San Francisco Public Works, and we're gonna bring this up from the current slide. So thank you, and I may incorporate indirectly some responses to feedback we just received, as it may benefit all of us. So this is 510 Stockton, order 210242, the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 510 Stockton Street. Our urban forestry staff approved the removal and the public protested. Here's a photo of the subject tree. It's the large tree in the center of the image. The species is Acacia melanoxylon. The common name is blackwood acacia. When you cut it down, it has a very dark heartwood, which is where it gets its name. The city once planted a lot of these trees. So just in general, Divisadero and Haight Street would be the streets that probably had the most amount of the species planted. And over the years, we retain them as much as possible, but when the structure and root pruning combine to make management unsustainable, that's when we initiate removal. We do see a lot of failures of this species when we haven't root pruned or repaired sidewalks. So the trees, the acacia trees that are large and have been retained thus far, again, is not happening just through luck. It's happening through active management and review of the condition of the tree as much as possible, with removal as the very last resort. So other information about this tree that our staff presented for us and provided. Key thing here are the codominant stems and some past branch failures. Also, there is sidewalk repair that's needed. We'll take a closer look at that. This species does not handle or tolerate root pruning well at all. We do see complete root failures where the entire tree uproots and falls. Hood line, I don't know how active they are anymore, but when they first started out, I just remember seeing they had documented a lot of acacia failures on Haight and Divisadero. And we've used those images in previous presentations. So defects with this specific tree are the lean, also that pruning cannot eliminate the risks. We say all risks, but enough for the risks to make it sustainable. The location can be replanted and the tree would be replaced within 120 days of its removal, pending funding. As we've heard folks mention, we have limited funding for replacement trees. We have some in the south, some funding for the southeast area of the city and other locations of the city. We do not have established funding sources. Sometimes an adjacent property owner will volunteer to water a tree, and that may help us speed up the replacement time it takes us to get the required tree replaced. Other images of the tree. What I wanted to point out is that there's a large wound on in this image on the left side or uphill side of the trunk, where just above this really large wound is a main structural bend and structural point within a union of the tree. So a large wound below the union, a main union, is an inherently weak point within the tree that is prone to fail. Also, if you look at this tree moving from the bottom of the tree and going up the trunk, there's the first stem on the left, to the left of the trunk. Then as you travel up the trunk, which goes a little bit to the right, sort of towards over the doorway on this image, extending upwards above that are two stems of equal size that form in a narrow point of attachment in a V shape. This is a really inherently weak section of that tree. We know a lot more about the importance of structural pruning when trees are young to establish wide branching attachments and to try to reduce the creation of stems with competing sizes, which are prone to fail. So the large injury in the trunk at this first large main union, and then yet again above that, some 8 feet above, with another secondary competing stems with a narrow point of attachment. Those are the structural defects that we see here with this particular tree. This is an image I grabbed. We've just again want to show the public that someone may get us on site and have questions about a tree. We document the conditions of the tree, and if we think we can keep maintaining that tree, we keep it and we maintain it. So here we are, date stamped September 13th, 2017, evaluating the tree. The decision in 2017 was to still try to work with the tree and keep it. The sidewalk damage, however, wasn't as bad in 2017, but over the last many years, the sidewalk has gotten damaged. If it was a different species, this would be a routine amount of root pruning and sidewalk repair to make. With the Blackwood acacia, for us in San Francisco, it basically equals removal. Even if we expand the basin, we're still going to be root pruning some of these roots and impacting the root system. There's some major girdling I also want to point out. Girdling is not a clothing garment. It is what happens when roots actually constrict the growth of the tree laterally. The base of the trunk here is being restricted in growth by a root that formed at the back of sidewalk and passed towards the curb. What that's doing is actually constricting the otherwise normal, healthy growth of the base of the trunk on the uphill side of the tree. So that's another concern for us, along with the sidewalk repair. And let me read our staff notes. Based on the photos, I can see what I need to see, but they stated the tree root related sidewalk damage poses a risk to pedestrians. That is true. We want to keep the sidewalk without having displacement so we don't have someone trip and get injured. This will require root pruning, which is likely to destabilize the tree. Again, it may not be a complete destabilization where the tree falls over immediately, but shortly after, we've seen a lot of root failures of this species. The location can be replanted, so it meets our planting guidelines for replacement, and we would replace it with a medium to large stature tree at maturity. And regarding replacements in general, the replacement trees themselves that come back are obviously very small saplings. They are not replacing it with in-kind canopy value. So just to go back to other comments earlier, it's a really great point to bring up that the tree that is planted as a replacement tree has a trunk that's probably about the size of an inch in diameter at the base of the trunk, if that, about 8 feet tall, and it's going to take a long time to recover the same canopy and benefits. It will be a long time before you're looking out the window and seeing a green canopy again. So we do want to be upfront about that, and which is also another reason why we retain trees as much as possible and removal, even the previous ficus trees we talked about. We've evaluated so many, ficus trees each year. We're talking well over hundreds. And of those, we do seek out to remove a very small amount of them. So based on the condition of this tree, we believe maintaining and retaining this tree is no longer sustainable. And so Public Works staff initiated removal and proposed to remove and replace the tree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess the city proposed this, so there's no appeal in the applicants. So are there any members of the public who wish to speak? I see one hand.
Hello, yes, this is Cameron.
Yes,
Thanks
go
for
ahead.
taking the call. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate this. I do appreciate the work of their urban forestry team. I know you guys love trees and always have the best interest. So that's part of what I'm here to do today, is just to make sure and understand why this tree is coming down. Have lived here for several years. It's a very iconic, beautiful tree. You can see it from Union Square, and it has a lot of benefits, obviously not just beauty, but the fact that it does provide a lot of shade and energy savings for the units. This is a west-facing building, and significant cost will change with the lack of this tree here. in viewing the tree, it does seem very healthy, thriving. It's actually currently in bloom as of yesterday. It has little yellow flowers all over it. So thanks for walking through some of the concerns from your perspective. I'm not sure if I'm able to share a screen. I'm not seeing a button here, but looks like I can't. So I was going to share a couple images, but I think a lot of your images are very similar. The things that I've noted, you walked us up the trunk of the tree and noticed the double lead at the top. Immediately to the right of that on the picture you were showing on the downhill side is a very large limb that is leaning down and seems to be what's causing the tree to lean. I'm not an arborist, but it would seem that if that large limb was removed, approximately 40% of the crown would be removed, and the remaining structure of the tree would actually be standing relatively straight up and allow the two lead branches up top and the one leaning uphill to continue to grow and hopefully stabilize that tree more. As far as the sidewalk itself, I walk around a lot of sidewalks here in San Francisco, and this one is very smooth. It definitely is starting to buckle in the new concrete collar that was put around the trunk within recent years. The rest of the sidewalk is perfectly smooth. It's not bumped up. There are no root damages. It is a smooth for both pedestrians and bikes. The only place it really does bubble up is near the curb there and immediately around the tree. And it seems like actually the tree well should be able to be increased in size to accommodate that, where people could avoid the bumped up sidewalk. One thing I do want to note is, and you actually have an image of it, Chris, in the photo you were showing, to the left of the tree uphill, you'll note a small sapling. There was sidewalk repair on this uphill section last spring, and they actually got rid of the two driveways and put in two new saplings. Both of those saplings have entirely failed. They are dead and collapsing, and so there's no other trees in that sense to really start taking up, and I'm concerned that any replacement tree, when we do get one, would do the same. So be curious what the mitigation plan is to help to ensure that new trees that are being planted do
30
indeed
seconds.
thrive. As you know, retaining an existing tree is up to 5 times, more cost effective than removal of and replacement of an old tree. And it takes well over 10 years, to your point, to establish that canopy to really get that energy savings. So while this tree is definitely overdue for trimming, and especially some of the large branches that are hanging out over the road and causing it to lean downhill, it does seem to be a healthy and vibrant tree that is worth taking another couple of years to see how it develops post pruning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see another hand.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I first just want to point out how remarkable it is that we've now had several commenters here at this hearing in defense of trees that are not, for lack of a better term, the usual suspects. I really hope the department listens to this and understands this as an indication that the public is, I believe, increasingly aware of our need for green infrastructure in the city and increasingly concerned that we are not doing what we need to do to preserve what we have and invest in what we need. I also want to second the previous commenter's note about new trees not making it. The mortality rate among new trees, which I think our city, first of all, has never done a mortality survey. And also most scientific research on mortality rates for trees in urban settings has them running somewhere between 7 and 10% mortality rate. San Francisco gives itself a very generous estimation of 3%, which I am fairly certain would not accurately reflect the actual mortality rate of new trees put in the ground. The commenter ahead of me also made the wise observation around energy savings that trees provide. He's not wrong about that. In fact, that is another scientifically proven fact that trees protect buildings from wind and from sun. And this in turn has direct impacts on the costs and utilities and the energy that it takes to keep these buildings habitable and comfortable for humans. Finally, I just want to point out that in my opening public comment, I noted that the city has a 13.7% canopy against the national average of 27%. I want everyone listening to understand that that 13.7% includes things like the Presidio and Golden Gate Park. And this particular neighborhood, I went ahead and just looked it up on the tree equity calculator, which is put out by American Forests. And this particular neighborhood actually has a tree canopy percentage of 3%. So with all of that context, I just want to encourage the department to please speak with whoever is opposing this, whoever lives right there, and please look and thoroughly examine alternatives to removal, whether that is experimental pruning, whatever it is. I would just please encourage the department to take this seriously. These things really do matter.
30 seconds.
This is a large impact on that building, and the city does not have the money to replace it, and there really is no true replacement, as Chris has already noted. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Nolte, and I'm concerned about that also some of the things that were discussed. You can always increase the size of the basin under the tree, so therefore that limits how much sidewalk you really have to take out, and also tree pruning. You can leave the tree prune. You got this weirdness about leveling everything, and it's a hill. My gosh, you can't level a hill. So therefore, this plot is never going to be leveled. So therefore, your pruning or whatever that you want to do to the trimming of down under into the tree and keeping the sidewalk, all that, it's not going to work because that's the hill. And also, there's movement on properties. I see surveyors around all over this downtown area now. And I'm saying to myself, is the city moving so much? You have all these surveyors right now going out and surveying the properties in San Francisco. So, and this is going around all over the city because we have all this currently all this construction is going on that's been done. That's creating problems. So, I'm because we've had these earthquakes. So, the other things that cause the sidewalk to buckle or for it's not necessarily always the tree. It could be other things that happen naturally, like an earthquake that destabilized it, or other things that happen. That's normal things that happen in San Francisco. We're prone to earthquakes. We're prone to other things, high winds, and so forth. These things are natural occurrence, and you always want to blame the tree for the fault problem. The tree is reacting to its environment. It was a nice tree when it was planted, and now it's moved on to where it's at now because of the things that have happened over the years. But as it's been planted there, it's still a good tree. You still have it as a good tree currently in your description. So let's keep this good tree and learn how to prune versus take away. And as stated, you don't have the money to replace. You're going to cost that building thousands of dollars in additional electrical bills and energy bills, and you're going to harm the character on that side of the street with the trees that were removed, planted, and not be able to grow. And again, the mortality rate, like said, the previous person said, you have this thing
30,
about
30 seconds.
Last, the 3 years that you said they should before you take over. So that's the problem about you plant a tree, but you don't replace them within a 3-year period. So you're back to square one. So I find that the best thing is to trim this tree and move on to the next tree.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Nulty, N-U-L-T-Y. So far in this hearing, I've heard bad tree. All these trees are bad. So let's find a way to make them good. So I suggest that a better way of handling trees is to let's plant some trees throughout the city, and then let's find the ones that are the worst or the ones that really need to go, and then remove those. But first, let's have some trees already in place. But we're kind of doing this haphazardly, and so we're always having a deficit of trees. So it seems to me that an overall plan has not happened for maintaining our trees in San Francisco. Instead, all I've heard in all these hearings is we have bad trees. The trees are bad because there's problems with them. There are problems because they're in the wrong location. There are problems because some developer has a problem with it. What a previous speaker said, a tree that's been there for 20 years or more has outgrown its spot because it's grown and it's buckled the nearby sidewalk, or things that have happened that make the buckling of the sidewalk. That's a natural kind of response. I didn't hear any real damage to the building. I didn't hear the property owner come on so far. I mean, speak about problems with the property. I have heard that, I mean, this is kind of a reality check that there are benefits for trees, and we have to maybe find a better way of dealing with our canopy in San Francisco, and planting a bunch of trees before we start taking them out, because we're just not having a gain set of numbers. And again, I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is we now have a director of public works. They should be advocating for a budget for trees, and so that there is a better plan for the trees in San Francisco. So far, what's happened for the last since this proposition was passed has only caused more chaos, and we watched more trees get taken away, and
30 seconds.
it's kind of sad to see. So, and by the way, I'm a native San Franciscan. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will now close the item and make my recommendation to the director. The next item on today's agenda is order number 210244. That representative is unable to attend. So we'll move to the next order, which is number 210245. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Chris Buck with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And if there's a way we could double check with our senior clerk, Cerise Waiters, confirming that there's a request, just to clarify, a request from the applicant, Cerise, to
Yes, that's correct.
postpone this.
They want to reschedule, but maybe if not at this time, maybe at the end of the hearing, Officer Harris, maybe if there are any persons who were here for that item, they will have the opportunity to speak if they choose to. Otherwise, they can wait and come back when they reschedule for next month.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Should we do that now?
Sure,
Yeah.
you can open. It's up to you. We do have a hand for raised.
We have, yeah, for just to anticipate questions. We have in the past, if someone's here to speak on an item, they've taken time out of their schedule to be here for that. We could typically have presented the matter by staff and then allowed public comment, so that is considered as with a follow-up hearing of it. So that is we could essentially hear the item, we'll share what we have to share, take public comment, and then those who present comment are not required to repeat public comment when it does get rescheduled.
Okay, well, we can do that.
Yeah.
So, may I have Public Works present its presentation for 210244 to consider removal of one street tree with replacement at 2226 15th Street?
Yes, thank you. I will start sharing the screen and get this over to presenter mode. So from current slide. So to repeat, this is regarding the removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 2226 15th Street, and staff approved the removal and the public has protested. The subject tree is also a ficus, as we've been discussing tonight. I can state with absolute certainty that the property owner, I don't know if it's the current owner or previous owner, in years past, going back at least 15 years, has applied to remove this tree several times. Each time up until this point, we have denied that request for removal because we believe the tree was still relatively healthy and sustainable. So we're talking about at least twice. Because I do recall there was a potential hazard tree in a neighboring backyard. So I've even been in the backyard to view a large Monterey pine tree. So I've been to this site many, many times over the last 15 years. And this time around, in evaluating the tree, we actually believe that there is reasonable, it is no longer healthy and sustainable. We agree with the removal of the tree. The primary reason is the decay that's forming at the base of the trunk. So moving on to this next image, at the base of the trunk, there's been a wound here, and ficus trees initially have reasonable defense mechanisms to slow the spread of wood decay fungi within exposed wood of the tree. That said, with time, wood will decay, and in this image on the left you can see there's a large wound. There's a substantial amount of decay taking place. There is some bark that is cracked on the right and is beginning to slough off. That's not a crack in the wood, the structural, cellular, the part of the tree, cellulose that helps keep a tree standing. But it is unusual, and unfortunately it's going to create more problems, additional problems for the tree. The sidewalk, as you can see, is fresh. So there's been multiple sidewalk repair and occurrences of root pruning. Even though this species does tolerate a good amount of root pruning, it still has experienced a lot of root disturbance and pruning by the property owner and Public Works. This is a close-up of our primary reason for approving removal at this time is the amount of decay in the base of the trunk. This is a close-up of the bark that's damaged. It's going to be very difficult for this tree, even though it's beginning to form. You can see there's a little edge of cambium that's forming on the left side of this vertical break in the trunk's bark, but this will hasten its decline even further. This is looking at the overall setting. It's a wide sidewalk, and the site itself is replantable. We have enough clearance, minimum clearances from the utilities. I will note the poor structure of the tree. However, the tree itself has been pruned very heavily. I don't know if we had issued a warning about excessive pruning the property owner in years past, but it's been heavily pruned over the years by the property owner. So the height of the tree has been greatly reduced over time, which actually, ironically, has allowed us to retain the tree. And so it's the property owner's repeated pruning of the tree that allowed us to deny previous requests for removal. That said, the core structure, the multiple stems with branches of equal size and narrow points of attachment, which make those stems prone to fail, combined with the significant amount of root decay in the lower trunk system and repeated sidewalk repair, does make this tree now a reasonable approval at the staff level. And so based on that, urban forestry staff did approve the tree for removal. And just reading our staff notes, the large decay column has been deteriorating due to fungal activity / brown rot. So the primary structural defect is basal and/or root rot. It suggests an elevated likelihood of failure. People often ask us to timeline something for them. It's really difficult to timeline potential future failure of a tree. It's estimated, though, for risk management that failure within 5 years is possible. Of course, failure before then is also possible as well. There's secondary stems higher up in the canopy that also have narrow points of attachment. So the overall history of this tree is that we've repeatedly denied previous requests to remove this tree. At this point in time in 2024, there's enough basal decay in the base of the trunk to allow us to, not allow, but to base our decision this time on approval by staff. It is a site that is replantable. And again, from what I've heard from our senior clerk, I don't believe the adjacent property owner is able to attend the hearing, but it would be wonderful to take public comment so that anyone who's here to present public comment on this case can have that heard and not have to come back if not planning to do so. So thank you. That concludes our staff presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any I see one hand for public comment.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi. I'd like to thank the people here who gave me a chance to represent my feelings about the tree and what I've observed over the past 35 years. I am the owner of the resident at 2226 15th Street. I retired 20 years ago, and when I did retire, I became a caretaker voluntarily of the block, and I do clean the street every Monday and Wednesday on both sides. I have complained in the past about the tree, mainly because that ulcer has been there for quite a long time. And I know I'm not an arborist, but it didn't look like a good thing. Currently, the ulcer has gotten much worse. And I also called back about the crack that appeared in the tree 3 years ago. I want to get something clear. I love the tree. My main reason for making the complaint was that the initial complaint was because the city wasn't responsible for the sidewalk. They weren't responsible for taking care of the tree. I was financially. So the reason the tree has been it's gotten worse over the last couple 5-6 years is because it really hasn't been attended to on a regular basis the way we did, and that's part of it. But this ulcer has gotten deeper, and you'll see that in the picture that there's the ulcer, then there's the inside wood, and then underneath that wood there's rot, and it's going down into the tree. You'll also notice that the root itself has broken a new sidewalk, which we paid for, and is heading towards my neighbor's water main. And it's less than 7 inches from the water main he has, and he too would be responsible for that repair. I bring this up because I am on the street very often, and all the neighbors know it. I've noticed that the other trees on the block, and by the way, there's about 14 other trees on the block between Noe and Castro, and they're quite healthy. And if you look underneath them and look up, you can't see anything. You see no daylight at all. However, the tree in front of my house in the last year has really dropped a lot of its canopy, and you'll see
30 seconds.
big empty holes where the tree needs to be taken care of. In addition to that, there's been twigs falling at a very strong rate over the past year. So I felt I agree with the city that it should be taken down because it is sick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no more comments for this item, and I don't see any hands, so I will close this item and make my recommendation to the director. The next item on the agenda today is 210245 to consider removal of one tree without replacement adjacent to 3425 Cesar Chavez Street. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. This is Chris Buck again with the Bureau of Urban Forestry. And I just wanted to confirm with our senior clerk if there was no public comment on that one. I know we had stated that we would schedule it again for next hearing if the owner wasn't able to attend. So could we maybe just clarify that with Cerise? It sounded like we actually
Yes,
did.
that's correct. We will have another hearing so that the recommendations will not be made yet from this
Okay.
hearing today.
Okay,
It will be rescheduled.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Then let me jump into the next case. So Chris with Public Works, and let me screen share, get over to the PowerPoint again. And bring this into current slide. Thank you. So moving on to this next item at 3425 Cesar Chavez Street. Public Works Order 210245, removal without replacement adjacent to this property. A permit application was filed. It is construction related with a building permit. Staff approved the removal and the public protested. So the reason for removal stated on the application here is that it's construction related, and the primary reason for removal is that the subject tree pictured here is conflicting with the proposed driveway to the new building that's planned to be built here. The subject tree is a Mayten tree, or Maytenus borea. The diameter is 8 inches. The height is approximately 18 feet tall. The tree itself is not going to be much of the focus here because the tree itself, the health of the canopy is fair to good. The vigor is fair. The structure is poor. The form is poor. It's a scrappy tree, but the reason for removal here is construction and the conflict with the driveway. One thing we will note is that the tree is damaging the sidewalk and lifting it up a bit. You can see there's been some shaving done to it. The species does not tolerate a lot of root pruning, so even if there wasn't construction, we would eventually be looking at repairing the sidewalk. All that's secondary to the fact that it's in conflict with the driveway. So let me read through the staff notes just to make sure I'm not skipping over anything here. The tree is beginning to lift the sidewalk despite its small size and young age. That's a good point. The species is known for sidewalk uplift and is expected to continue to cause sidewalk damage. The tree location cannot be replanted due to what's planned at the site. So the tree condition will be appraised and in lieu of planting fee equal to the tree's value will be paid. So either the basic minimum in lieu fee of $2,431 or the appraised value, whichever is the greater of the two. The location can't be planted. So let's see. Here's the next screen is showing the proposed driveway location, and this is just showing a lot of the different factors that are going in the site, showing the curb, the property line, where the driveway is proposed. We often talk to planning to try to understand, like, is there any way to place a proposed driveway elsewhere? So the applicant may have feedback, or their designer may have feedback on that. There's a number of different factors involved there, but of course, we get frustrated when trees need to be removed for construction, and we'll let the applicant speak to those issues. Here's another good image of the overall site. The location is not replantable because all the adjacent planting locations have been planted out. That's the good news. The curb cut will force any shifting of the basin to be too close to the adjacent trees. Spacing for the expected species of Platanus acerifolia is a minimum of 35 feet on center. The current space, it would only allow for about 18 feet on center, or half the necessary spacing, but it would also really be jammed right up against the very edge of the tree basin, sorry, the edge of the curb cut for the driveway. As this driveway will serve a lot of the building, that's just not going to be realistic. So in this particular case, we are losing removal without replacement of a tree due to construction. Again, we would not typically recommend removal of this tree at this point in time. We would try to repair the sidewalk and retain the tree. But again, we've received a request for removal with an application from the applicant to remove the tree without replacement due to the installation of a driveway. The rest of the project will trigger tree planting requirements on this frontage and or the other, and for each tree that they're required to plant that can't be planted due to utility conflicts, we assess other in lieu fees as well. But this is the snapshot as it looks at this immediate area of the frontage to the project on Cesar Chavez Street. So that concludes the staff presentation on this matter. We typically recommend the applicant speak first and then public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the appellant or applicant here to speak?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, good
Hey.
evening.
Thank you. Am I able to share screen?
Yes, just one moment. I'll promote you to panelist,
Thank you.
and you will answer when it prompts you. And then once you come over, you'll need to unmute yourself once again.
Okay. Okay, great. And I just have to see how to share screen on here.
There
Okay.
should be a green button that says share screen.
Yes, great.
There-
Can you see
there you
my screen on here? All right, thank you very much.
You're starting to share, but it's not in focus yet. There you go.
Is it
It's
come up?
it's showing now.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you, Chris, for the summary. My name is Melinda Sarjapour. I'm with Ruben Junius and Rose, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which manages this property and applied to remove the one tree on Cesar Chavez to install a new curb cut. We do respectfully ask that DPW uphold its determination allowing removal of this tree because it's necessary to install an approved curb cut that's going to maintain loading and emergency vehicle access to the site and the existing building on the site. And there's no other location along Cesar Chavez where that curb cut can be placed. It's already at the minimum width that's needed for emergency vehicle access to the area. I did provide some context in a letter brief that I sent last Friday, so hopefully you've received that. And it includes this site plan. And I just wanted to pull up the site plan because it's slightly different than the image that we saw on the screen. So just for context, this property was developed in the 1920s as a Sears store with a large parking lot that took up the north end of this block, which is the area that you see in the lighter color or white here. And a few years ago, 2017, that parking lot was split and the lighter section was sold to Sequoia Living, which is going to be developing 100% affordable housing on the site. As part of that lot split, though, the property lost access to the only curb cut, which was on Cesar Chavez, which is further down from where this site was. And that's now part of the adjacent site. So the applicant sought approval for a new curb cut along Cesar Chavez so we could provide loading an emergency vehicle to the rear of the existing building, which is what is in the dark gray section, fronts on Cesar Chavez and then Mission Street on the other side. So just for clarification, it's not directly tied to whatever new development will be proposed on that letter portion. It's going to be 100% affordable housing, and we do anticipate they'll be doing tree planting in connection with that. This is to maintain emergency vehicle and loading access to the rear of the building, which is now Live Work, but was previously Sears. So the access is important because it's a Live Work building with significant loading requirement. And the curb cut provides mid-block emergency vehicle access that can serve not only that existing building, but also through the center of the block to the planned new housing development. The new curb cut was heard by and approved by the Planning Commission last May and through DBI building permits in January 2024. And as part of that process and the plans for each, we had showed the need to remove this one tree. As you can see in the site plan that's attached to our letter and up on this screen now, if you can see my cursor, the tree at issue is actually
30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, right in the middle of that curb cut. And unfortunately, there's no way to retain it. The property doesn't have enough room along that frontage to put it anywhere else. And it's already proposed at the minimum width that it can be. While we don't have room to replace on Cesar Chavez, we have proposed at least one additional tree on Mission Street, which is pending BUF review for location. And for these reasons, we ask that the director uphold the initial determination. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comment?
Yes, Michael Nulty, N-U-L-T-Y. I'm a little confused when somebody says there's a determination. This is a tree permit. There's no determination. This is an application for a permit. So the question here is only the permit, nothing to do with the determination of anything of any kind. I understand that previous speaker was an attorney, but I don't know. So as far as access and emergency access, that's very important. And I would like to see, obviously, if possible, replacement tree to go in. When the senior development is put in, I mean, seniors like trees. I'm a senior. I like trees. So there should be a plan for greenery for the development. Because I mean, seniors, just because they're in the city doesn't mean they can't appreciate greenery and the birds and everything else that go onto the trees. So please accommodate the seniors in an appropriate way when you future of this development and what's going on here. And sorry that Sears left. We're losing all our department stores in San Francisco. I mean, that's another issue too. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so just a quick note that the 2021 Climate Action Plan called for a preservation of trees in construction and development. And only when that was unavoidable, it called for a policy of what's called basal replacement, which is putting in as much trunk as you take out. So I don't recall what the DBH of this tree is. Based on the photo, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to guess it's somewhere around 8 to 10 inches, perhaps. So these two policies that the 2021 Climate Action Plan called for, it called for those by 2023. And it's 2024, and our city still isn't doing it. But based on what the applicant just presented, it almost sounded like they've taken upon themselves to do that kind of work, to look for alternatives, and to even go out and find an empty basin on Mission Street around the corner, I presume, for a replacement tree. So I would like to thank the applicant for doing that. I would like the decision to reflect that there actually is a replacement going in, because as written, that says there's not. And I would also like to encourage the city and the applicant to keep going on following the Climate Action Plan, and don't just put in one tree. You know, if you're taking out a 10-inch tree and you're putting in an 1.5-inch tree, that's not a replacement. That's not basal replacement. That's not what the Climate Action Plan calls for. I can assure you, there are plenty of empty basins in that neighborhood, plenty of locations to put more trees. This is the mission. This is a neighborhood that needs more trees for a lot of reasons, including environmental justice. And I would also second what Michael said about seniors and their access to green spaces. So I would just encourage the city and the applicant to continue on with what the Climate Action Plan calls for, which is a basal replacement and not just a 1-for-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is John Nolte. I appreciate the diligence of the attorney to find a replacement tree, hopefully somewhere on Mission Street. I have done surveys all the way down to Chavez, so I know the neighborhood very well, and I've gone past this location. So to me, to hear that a site is now being developed, and more trees are going in, but looking at some pictures that I have, the frontage of that property already has, like Chris stated, the frontage on Chavez, all the plots have been planted out. And also, it seems that the one that they seem to be want to take out is the biggest one of the four. So that is a concerning effort on me to what I'm seeing on my own, one things that pictures that I've already taken up for this hearing. So I'm concerned about, again, this as what was stated about the replacement of this replacement of the basal size. So I think more trees should be going into the mission. There are empty plots around there to accommodate this property owner to adhere to that our comment plan for the city, and also this is a very good example of stewardship on a part of a development to continue this type of work when they take out one tree and put in multiple trees in return. It's only fair to the city and also to the neighborhood, and also to the impacts that are happening to that neighborhood as they develop the rest of that site that is empty currently. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will close this item and make my recommendation to the director. The next item on the agenda is 210246 to consider removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 1000 Sutter Street. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you, Chris Buck with the Bureau of Urban Forestry with Public Works, and I'm gonna pull up the slide. Current slide. Thank you. So this next item, as stated, is considering the removal of one street tree with replacement. There's a permit application associated with it, 795030. Staff approved the removal and the public protested. One of the things that occurred at this site is that the property owner had been granted a permit to remove a tree and or trees, and my understanding is that they, when repairing the sidewalk and removing some of the sidewalk, we had a total root failure where the entire tree fell over. So we're gonna talk about that and go over some photos. The subject tree is pictured here near the main entrance. This first image, what it's showing is a ficus tree, and many ficus trees have poor taper, but at the base of this trunk, there's no root flare, meaning if you just think of a generic tree with the base of a trunk swelling out as it comes up from the ground, there is really no taper, and it's almost reverse taper. So that's the serious concern that we have here, and the fact that previous trees failed at this site under similar circumstances. So going to the specifics of the tree, it's a ficus microcarpa nitida. The diameter, about 4.5 feet above grade, is 16 inches in diameter. The health of the tree, the canopy is fair, the structure is poor, the form is poor to fair. There's a permit application associated with this, 2021-0913-8252. So this tree was initially planned to be retained. During sidewalk work on the Hyde Street frontage, a tree in similar condition failed. It was determined by the Bureau that the remaining trees adjacent to the project were compromised due to root flare girdling and removed as an emergency. These trees will be replaced by applicant. The tree location can be replanted, so we have enough clearance from our utilities. We know we have the minimum clearances, so it meets the replacement criteria. And it states here that the applicant will install a 24-inch box-sized tree, and the species proposed is Catalina ironwood. Here's another image of the base of the trunk on the right, just showing how the trunk width is very, very uniform as it passes below the top level of the soil, or grade as we call it. Healthy root crown would typically show swelling and widening out at the base of the trunk before it passes below the level of the soil level, which would show us healthy development of the lower root system. Here's another view of that. Regarding replacement, this location does meet our guidelines as stated. This is just another example. It's just the very front of a bus loading zone, so we don't have to adhere to the requirements of a bus loading zone, because it's not directly adjacent to it. It's beyond that. On the image on the right is an example of the replacement species. But again, Public Works had to respond. I do believe the applicant had to remove one tree that failed, and then Public Works removed an additional tree as an emergency removal. This tree did not have the sidewalk removed yet, so we were able to post this tree for removal. Again, we always err on the side of more public notice when possible, when we think we can do it and manage public safety. So in this case, the sidewalk had not been removed, so we didn't experience the failure, but the rest of the sidewalk will be removed, and we're concerned the tree will fail at that point, which is what has occurred to at least 2 of the other trees on the site. So based on the emergency removals and failure that occurred, this tree shows the exact same conditions, and so our staff recommendation is to allow the tree to be removed by the applicant. That sums up the staff presentation for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant or appellant here to speak? Oh, yes. Is there an applicant here? Was this or Chris, was this city initiated?
You could say it's almost both, in that the applicant wished to retain this tree. They weren't seeking the removal of the tree.
Okay,
And so it may be the case that our inspector who's handling the application may not have invited them to attend or required them to attend, because our staff may have seen it as a clear issue of us needing to do that. I do want to state, whenever there's construction on site, everyone's radar is up and antennae are up regarding potential impact to trees from construction. This is not that case. They were doing routine work, removing sidewalk. The other trees started failing. We had to get out and remove another tree that they had no intention of removing. And so it's fair for the applicant to view this as essentially not something they were looking to remove. So
okay.
I just want to clarify that. I think I can also clarify. I will have our staff clarify with you for your recommendation with the director to clarify who's removing this tree, if it's Public Works or the applicant.
Got it.
Even though we didn't seek the removal of this tree, the project is indirectly leading to it. And so I believe the applicant may be willing to remove this at their cost. We're trying to thread that needle. If we can have them handle that removal, we'll gladly take them up on that, but it is something that we're initiating. So there's a few moving pieces there, but I will circle back and help clarify so that it's very clear in the what you've then forward to the director for consideration.
Understand. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment on this?
Good evening. This is the second time this property has been in front of this hearing for removal of trees. There were a total of 4 on Hyde and 3 on Sutter. They are now 1 that's left. So you're telling me Chris, as his own admission, does account for 6 trees. He only talked about 2 or 3. So my problem is that all these ficus trees have been taken out by this construction work, and Chris has just stated only about a couple of trees, but not. I didn't hear about the 7 that were there before construction started. So I'm very concerned about you come in. You're saying this construction related. They didn't ask for all these trees to be taken out. Then more trees are damaged by them, and then they have no liability when they start construction and start wrecking the trees that are there that they didn't want to take out in the first place. I am very concerned about how you're not finding these people for construction related damages to ficus trees at the cost of the city. And also to that building. That building was fine until they started to rehab the building at my cost, because I'm sure there's taxpayers' money involved in that too. So when you do these things, I find this very annoying that like I said, 7 trees were there. Now we're down to 1, and now you want to take that one out. So it's lacking. That building is not going to have heat. That building is not going to have shade. Seniors are going to be moving into that building. You're hurting the building by taking all these mature trees out. So I want them to construct, the contractor to be fined for the value of these trees and not this saying wishy-washy thing and take control. We have an ordinance for that, part of that ordinance. So I wanted to be clear on the record that this is construction by contractor misuse and not tree protection that was supposed to be put in from the prior hearing. And then so this would never have happened. So this is construction by the contractor, their problem, they created it and then fix it. So
Thank
let's
you.
be clear.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. As a reminder, please direct all comments to me, the hearing officer, Ms. Harris.
Well, but he presented that there was no other presenter, so there,
I understand.
I'm just clarifying the background that he missed on his presentation.
Thank you.
And you can see all this in writing already on prior motion hearings.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any other comments?
Thanks,
Josh,
Lee.
go ahead.
Thanks. I think what's really hard for me to understand is that these trees survived those tremendous near cyclonic winter storms of last year. They survived the winds and the storms of this past winter. But somehow we start doing the littlest bit of construction around them, or what's referred to as routine work, and suddenly they just fall over. So this begs the question whether the problem is these trees or if the problem is us. Because it sure looks like the problem is us. That this so-called routine work is more threatening to these trees' stability than anything Mother Nature could throw at them, including 90-mile-an-hour winds and the unprecedented storms of the last 2 winters. If these trees can survive those storms, but not even the most routine construction work, then I would suggest that maybe we need to give a little more thought to what we consider as routine, or what construction is considered acceptable around these trees. And it would seem to me that we need to be doing a lot better and maybe creating some more standards of care and protection of what we do around these trees, so that they can survive us just like they survive the harshest climates, that the harshest conditions that Mother Nature seems to throw at them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Nolte. It would seem to me that in order for this hearing officer to understand, the complete picture needs to be stated so that a proper decision, because it's almost like saying, okay, we had a bunch of trees there and now the final tree is just going to go. You know, that sounds like for expedience purposes, okay, well, we're going to replace all, because I mean, obviously the other trees should be replaced and should have been replaced too. Because I mean, that's the purpose of street trees, is to have them around the streets of San Francisco. But you know, it's like the final tree, you know, we got to find a reason to get rid of it. So I didn't really hear a very good thorough explanation of what really happened. It sounds like whoever's the contractor should have been invited to this hearing to give a presentation, or the developer or whoever, and hear what their plans are. Not only that, but you know, to take fault on what has occurred or will occur based on this hearing. So because I've sat at board meetings and I get better information than what I've heard today. So you have to hear as much information as possible to make a decision. And luckily my brother was able to give a better understanding what has happened on other frontages of the same building. which you can't hear just a piece, what happened to one tree. So, you know, maybe you should be giving us gold stars for just showing up as public members of the public to having us do our due diligence and helping decision makers making appropriate decisions. And again, I want to advocate for more trees in the budget of public works. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more comments on this item, I will close this item and make a recommendation to the director. Are there any public comments on any of the items on the agenda? If you have spoken, you will not be allowed to speak again. This is for those who may have come late or didn't have a chance to speak previously. Okay, well, if there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. Thank you very much. This hearing is now closed.